Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy heartfelt stories filled with emotion and meaning, please support by subscribing, liking, and sharing. Your support helps this channel grow and keeps more stories coming your way. The moment Emma opened the door and saw Daniel standing there, she felt a strange twist in her chest. He was her husband's closest friend, practically family, but something about the way he looked at her that afternoon felt different. It was supposed to be an ordinary day. Her husband, Mark, had left early for a business trip, leaving Emma to take care of the house. She didn't expect anyone to visit. When Daniel showed up, saying he needed to drop off some tools Mark had borrowed, she thought nothing of it. Still, something about his timing was odd. He waited until Mark was gone. Until the house was quiet, Emma smiled politely. "You could have brought them yesterday? You were here for dinner." Daniel gave a faint smile, his eyes avoiding hers. "Yeah, I could have. But I needed to talk to you." "Alone." The words froze her. "Talk to me? About what?" she asked softly, trying to hide her confusion. Daniel took a deep breath, stepping inside. He placed the box of tools on the counter, then turned to face her. His expression wasn't casual. It wasn't the easy smile she was used to. It was serious, heavy, almost painful. "I know this is strange," he said quietly, "but there's something I've kept to myself for too long." Emma's heart started to race. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the way his voice trembled slightly. Maybe it was the fact that the air suddenly felt too still. "Daniel, you're scaring me," she whispered, half smiling to lighten the moment. "I don't mean to," he said quickly. I can't keep pretending anymore." She blinked, unsure what he meant. He looked at her for a long moment, his jaw tightening as if he were fighting something inside him. Then finally, he said the words she never saw coming. "I've been in love with you for years, Emma." For a second, the room spun. Emma froze, gripping the back of a chair. "What did you just say?" He looked down, his voice breaking. "I know it's wrong. I know you love Mark and he's my best friend. But I had to tell you. I can't go on pretending that seeing you doesn't hurt." Emma took a step back. Her throat felt dry, her heart pounding so hard she could barely think. "Daniel," she whispered, shaking her head. "You can't say things like that." "I know," he said. "Believe me, I've told myself that 1,000 times. But I can't keep it inside anymore." She turned away, trying to steady her breathing. The house, once warm and familiar, now felt suffocating. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," he said softly. "And I don't expect anything. I don't want to ruin your marriage or my friendship with Mark. I just needed you to know. Because I can't lie to myself anymore." There was silence. Only the ticking of the kitchen clock filled the room. Emma didn't know what to say. She'd known Daniel for years, since before she even met Mark. He was kind, loyal, the kind of person you could trust completely. Never once had she imagined he felt anything more than friendship. But now, everything felt different. She finally looked up at him. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why tell me this when Mark's away?" His eyes glistened. "Because I knew if I didn't say it now, I never would. And because I'm leaving town soon. I got a job offer in Seattle. I needed to say goodbye." Properly. Emma felt her heart twist. He was leaving? She wanted to feel relief, to be glad that the tension in the room would disappear with distance. But instead, she felt something else. A strange sadness she couldn't explain. "Daniel," she whispered, "you shouldn't have told me." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I had to. Because you deserve to know the truth. That someone out there loves you enough to never say a word, just to keep your world safe." Tears burned at the back of her eyes. She turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth. She didn't love him. She couldn't. But hearing those words, so raw, so sincere, stirred something deep inside her. When she finally looked back, he was standing by the door, ready to leave. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I'll make sure you never have to see me again if that's what you want." Before she could answer, he opened the door and stepped outside into the cold autumn air. Emma stood frozen. Her heart caught between guilt and confusion. She didn't chase after him. She didn't even call Mark to tell him what had happened. She just stood there staring at the closed door, wondering why her heart hurt so much. That night, she couldn't sleep. Mark called from his hotel room, cheerful and tired, asking about her day. She answered softly, forcing a smile he couldn't see. "Everything's fine," she said, but it wasn't. Because no matter how hard she tried to push the moment away, Daniel's voice echoed in her mind. "I've been in love with you for years," and she couldn't stop asking herself, why did it hurt so much to hear that? That night felt longer than any night Emma could remember. The house was quiet, but her thoughts weren't. Every corner seemed to echo Daniel's words, like his confession had left an invisible mark on everything. She turned in bed, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. Mark's voice still lingered from their evening call, warm, trusting, unaware. He'd asked her if she missed him. She said yes. She meant it. But there was something else under that answer now, something she couldn't name. By morning, she hoped the feeling would fade. She made coffee, opened the curtains, and tried to start her day like nothing had happened. But as sunlight spilled into the kitchen, she saw the small box Daniel had left, the one with the tools. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. On top of the box, there was a folded note she hadn't noticed before. Her name was written in Daniel's familiar handwriting. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she opened it. "Emma, please don't be angry. I didn't mean to make things harder for you. I just needed to tell the truth before I left. Take care of Mark. You're both lucky to have each other." There was no signature, just that. Simple. Final. Emma sat at the table, staring at the note. It wasn't romantic or pleading. It was quiet and respectful, the kind of message from someone who didn't expect anything back. Yet, somehow that made it even harder to read. She folded it carefully and slipped it back inside the box. Later that afternoon, she met her best friend Lily for lunch. Emma hadn't planned to tell anyone what happened, but the weight of it pressed too heavy on her chest. Over steaming coffee, she finally said, "Lily, something happened yesterday." Daniel came by, Lily smiled. "Mark's friend? He's always been such a sweetheart. What did he need?" Emma hesitated, stirring her drink. He said something. Unexpected. The lightness faded from Lily's face. "Unexpected how?" Emma looked down. "He told me he's been in love with me. For years." Lily gasped softly. "Oh my God. Emma, are you serious?" Emma nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said he didn't want to hide it anymore. That he's leaving town." Lily leaned forward. "What did you say?" "I told him he shouldn't have said it," Emma said. "But the way he looked at me, Lily, he wasn't trying to make me feel guilty. He just needed to say it." Lily reached for her hand. "You didn't do anything wrong. You can't control how someone else feels." "I know," Emma said quietly, "but I keep thinking about it. About him leaving. And about how sad it felt." Lily's expression softened. "Sad because he loves you? Or sad because he's going away?" Emma looked out the window, watching the wind move through the trees. She didn't answer. That evening, she got a text from Daniel. Just one line. "I'm heading out tomorrow morning. Take care, Emma." She stared at the message for a long time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to reply, "Safe travels" or "Good luck," or even "Thank you." But she didn't send anything. She locked her phone and placed it face down on the counter. The next morning, rain fell softly outside. Emma stood by the window with her coffee, watching the gray sky blur into the horizon. Somewhere out there, Daniel was driving away, leaving the town, leaving everything behind. She should have felt relief. Instead, her chest ached with a quiet, unexplainable sorrow. When Mark returned 2 days later, the house filled with his warmth again. He hugged her tightly, kissed her forehead, and told her how much he'd missed her. She smiled and held on to him, trying to bury the weight that still lingered inside her. They spent the weekend together cooking, laughing, and watching old movies. Mark talked about work, about plans for their upcoming anniversary trip. About everything, except Daniel. And she didn't bring him up either. But on Sunday afternoon, while Mark was fixing the garage door, she found herself walking into the backyard. The rain had left the air smelling clean and sharp. She looked toward the old oak tree where they used to host barbecues, where Daniel would always stand beside Mark, laughing, flipping burgers, teasing her about her overdone marshmallows. For a moment, she could almost hear that laughter again. She closed her eyes. Then, behind her, she heard Mark call out, "Hey, honey, can you hand me the wrench?" She turned, smiling softly. Coming. As she walked back, she realized she'd never tell Mark what Daniel said. Not because she wanted to hide anything, but because she didn't want to plant doubt in a place where there had always been trust. Still, deep down, she knew something had changed. Not in her marriage, not in her love for Mark, but in the quiet space of her heart where Daniel's words now lived. That night, she placed the small note Daniel had written into a drawer beside her bed. She told herself she'd throw it away one day, but she didn't. And months later, when life seemed perfectly normal again, something would happen that brought all those feelings back. Stronger, deeper, and impossible to ignore. 6 months passed. The seasons changed, and so did life in small, gentle ways. Emma and Mark settled into their familiar rhythm again, shared breakfasts, weekend errands, quiet evenings with music playing softly in the background. On the surface, everything was perfect. But sometimes when the night grew still and she couldn't sleep, Emma found herself opening the drawer where Daniel's note still rested. She would look at it for a few seconds, just long enough to remember his voice, then close the drawer again, reminding herself that he was gone, that those feelings belonged to the past. Until one morning, a message appeared on her phone that changed everything. It was from an unknown number. "Hi, Emma, it's Daniel." Her breath caught. For a moment, she just stared at the screen. Then she read the rest. "I didn't want to bother you, but I thought you should know I'm back in town, only for a few days. I'd like to see Mark, and you, if that's okay." Emma's heart thudded. She hadn't heard from him since the day he left. Part of her had assumed she never would again. She read the message 3 times before replying, "Of course. Mark will be happy to see you." That night, when Mark came home, she told him casually over dinner, "Guess who texted me today?" Mark looked up from his plate. "Who? Daniel?" "He's back for a visit." Mark smiled widely. "No way, that's great." "It's been too long. We should have him over for dinner this weekend." Emma forced a small smile. "Yeah, that sounds nice." But inside, her thoughts were anything but calm. The weekend came faster than she expected. The day of Daniel's visit, Emma spent the morning cleaning and cooking, trying to keep busy. Mark was cheerful, humming as he set the table. When the doorbell rang, her heart gave a quick, nervous flutter. She opened the door. Daniel stood there, a little thinner, a little older, but still with that same quiet smile. His hair was shorter, and his eyes, kind as ever, met hers for just a second longer than necessary. "Hey, Emma," he said softly. "Hi," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Come in." Mark came rushing from the kitchen, grinning wide. "Daniel, man, it's been forever." The 2 men hugged tightly, their laughter filling the house. Emma watched, her chest tightening with something she didn't want to name. Dinner was warm and easy. They reminisced about old times, about camping trips, college stories, and silly mistakes. For a while, it felt like nothing had changed. But when Mark stepped outside to take a work call, the room fell quiet. Emma busied herself with clearing the table, but she could feel Daniel's eyes on her. "Finally," he said softly. "You look happy." She glanced up. "I am," he nodded. "Good, you deserve that." There was a pause, the kind that carried more meaning than words. "How's Seattle?" she asked, trying to keep her voice even. "Busy," he said. "Different. But it's been good for me. Gave me time to think." She nodded, unsure what to say. Then he added, almost in a whisper, "I didn't expect to miss this place as much as I did." Her hands froze around a plate. Daniel. He shook his head gently. Don't worry. I'm not here to make things complicated. I just wanted to see you both. That's all. She looked into his eyes and saw sincerity there. The same quiet honesty that had always made him who he was. And yet, beneath it, there was a sadness she couldn't ignore. Mark came back inside just then, breaking the tension. Everything okay? He asked, looking between them. Emma smiled quickly. Perfect. We were just talking about Seattle. Daniel grinned. Yeah, I was telling her it's not nearly as exciting as people think. The evening ended with laughter again. When Daniel stood at the door to leave, Mark clapped his shoulder. We have to catch up again before you go. Maybe hit the golf course? Daniel nodded. Definitely. Then he turned to Emma. Thanks for dinner. It was really good to see you. Her voice was soft. You too, Daniel. After he left, Emma stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street. Mark came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He seems different, doesn't he? She smiled faintly. Yeah, I think he's been through a lot. Mark kissed the top of her head. I'm glad he's doing okay. I've missed that guy, Emma nodded, leaning against him. But her eyes stayed on the empty street long after Daniel's car was gone. That night, as she lay beside Mark, half asleep, her phone buzzed quietly on the nightstand. It was another message from Daniel. Thank you for being kind tonight. I meant what I said before. I'll always care, no matter where I am. Don't worry, I'll keep my promise. Her heart ached. She didn't reply. She just turned off the phone, placed it face down, and closed her eyes. But sleep didn't come easily. Because even though Daniel had promised to stay away from her heart, his presence had already found its way back in, and she wasn't sure she wanted it to leave again. The next few weeks passed quietly, but Emma couldn't shake the unease that had settled inside her. She told herself she was fine, that Daniel's visit had been harmless, that the past was behind them. But some nights, when she walked past the window and saw the moonlight spilling across the empty street, she caught herself remembering the look in his eyes, the way he said, I'll always care. She didn't reply to his message, yet she hadn't deleted it either. Mark, on the other hand, was happier than ever. Daniel's return had lifted his spirits. The two met twice after that dinner, once for coffee and once for golf. Each time, Mark came home laughing, full of old memories and new stories. It's like no time has passed, he said one evening. I really missed him, Emma smiled. I can tell. Still, a quiet worry tugged at her heart. One Sunday morning, Mark suggested inviting Daniel over again. He's leaving next week, he said. Let's have one last dinner before he goes. Just like old times, Emma hesitated. Sure, that sounds nice. When Daniel arrived that evening, he brought flowers, lilies. Her favorite. For the hostess, he said lightly. She thanked him, her hands trembling slightly as she placed them in a vase. Dinner went smoothly at first. The three of them talked and laughed the way they used to. But as the night went on, Emma noticed Daniel's eyes growing distant, thoughtful. When Mark went out to take another phone call, something urgent from work, the air in the room shifted again. Emma started gathering plates, trying to keep herself busy, but Daniel spoke softly. Emma, can I ask you something? She froze. What is it? He looked at her, his voice gentle but steady. Are you happy? Really happy? She blinked. Of course I am. He nodded slowly, as if weighing her answer. Good. That's all I wanted to know. But something in his tone made her heart twist. Daniel, she said carefully, why do you ask me that? He smiled faintly. Because you deserve to be. I used to wonder if maybe I made things harder for you. I hope I didn't. Emma's throat tightened. You didn't, you just surprised me. I know, he said softly. And I'm sorry for that. But I'll never be sorry for how I felt. You were the first person who ever made me believe love could be quiet. Not dramatic or loud, just real. Her breath caught. Daniel, please. I'm not saying it to cause trouble, he interrupted gently. I just want you to know that even if I never see you again, I'll remember you as someone who made my life better. She felt tears burning her eyes. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I had to," he said simply. "Because sometimes the truth deserves to be said, even if it changes nothing." The sound of the front door opening made them both turn. Mark stepped inside, still on his phone, giving them a quick wave before walking into the other room. Daniel looked back at Emma. "Take care of him," he said quietly. "And take care of yourself." Before she could reply, he stood and smiled. That same bittersweet smile she'd seen months ago. When Mark returned, Daniel was already at the door, ready to leave. "Hey, you're not heading out already?" Mark asked, surprised. "Yeah, I've got an early morning," Daniel said. "Thanks for dinner." "It meant a lot." Mark clapped his shoulder. "Anytime, man." "Don't be a stranger," Daniel nodded. "Good night, Mark. Good night, Emma." She managed a small, trembling smile. "Good night." After he left, Mark turned to her. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just tired." But later that night, she couldn't sleep. The house felt too still. She went downstairs, standing by the window again. The lilies Daniel brought sat on the counter, their scent faint in the quiet air. She reached out and touched one of the petals, soft, fragile, alive. Her phone buzzed on the table. A new message. "I'm at the airport. I wanted to say goodbye properly this time. Thank you for letting me care about you, even from afar." Emma stared at the screen, her eyes blurring with tears. She typed back slowly. "Take care, Daniel. I wish you all the happiness you deserve." A moment later, his reply came. "You already gave me that." "Emma, goodbye." She set her phone down and pressed her hand to her heart. Feeling the ache settle deep inside, Mark stirred upstairs, calling her name softly. She wiped her tears quickly and went to him, slipping back into bed as if nothing had happened. He pulled her close, half asleep, whispering, "You're quiet tonight. Everything okay?" "Yes," she whispered back, her voice steady but soft. Everything's okay, but deep down, she knew something inside her had changed forever. And even though Daniel was gone, truly gone this time, a part of her heart would always remember the man who once loved her quietly and never asked for anything in return. What she didn't know yet was that Daniel's goodbye wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning of a truth that would soon come to light. One that would test everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the meaning of goodbye. 3 months passed since Daniel's final goodbye. Emma thought time would make the ache fade, but some memories had a way of lingering no matter how much she tried to move on. Life had returned to its quiet rhythm. Mark was busier than ever, working late most nights. Emma tried to fill her days with small joys, gardening, volunteering at the local library, visiting her sister. But sometimes, in those quiet moments between chores and sleep, she'd catch herself remembering Daniel's voice. Calm, gentle, full of sincerity. It wasn't longing anymore. It was something else, something like gratitude mixed with sorrow. Then one evening, while Emma was cooking dinner, her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number again. For a split second, her heart raced, but the voice on the other end wasn't Daniel's. "Hi, is this Mrs. Reed?" "Yes," she said cautiously. "This is Margaret. I work at St. Mary's Hospital in Seattle. I'm calling because you're listed as an emergency contact for Mr. Daniel Hayes." Emma's hand froze. "What?" "There's been an accident," the woman said gently. "He's stable now, but we weren't able to reach any family. He had your name listed for contact." Emma's knees went weak. "Oh my God, is he?" "He's alive," Margaret said softly. "He just asked us to let you know." Emma didn't remember much after that, just the sound of her own heart pounding in her ears. That night, she told Mark everything. Almost everything. "Daniel's been in an accident," she said quietly as they sat on the couch. Mark's eyes widened. "What, is he okay?" "They said he's stable, but he's in Seattle. He doesn't have family there, and somehow he listed me as his contact." Mark frowned slightly. "That's strange." "Why you?" She hesitated, her heart tightening. "Maybe he didn't have anyone else nearby," Mark nodded slowly. "Poor guy. You should check on him. Maybe call the hospital tomorrow. She nodded. I will. That night, sleep didn't come easily. She kept replaying the nurse's words in her mind. He just asked us to let you know. The next morning, she called the hospital again. The nurse said Daniel was awake but weak. He'd asked if she might visit before he was discharged. Emma didn't know why her hands shook as she packed her bag. She told Mark she'd drive up to check on him, just for the day. He didn't question it. The drive to Seattle felt endless. When she finally reached the hospital and walked into his room, she stopped cold. Daniel looked pale but peaceful, his arm in a sling, a few scratches on his face. When he saw her, his eyes softened. You came, he said quietly. She managed a small smile. Of course I came. He tried to sit up, wincing slightly. You didn't have to. I just wanted to hear your voice. I didn't think you'd actually drive all the way here. She moved closer, her voice trembling. You scared me, Daniel. I'm sorry, he said with a weak chuckle. Guess I'm not great at goodbyes after all. She sat by his bed, tears filling her eyes. What happened? Car accident, he said simply. Someone ran a red light. I'll be fine. Just a few broken ribs. There was a pause. Quiet and heavy. Why me? She finally whispered. Why did you list me as your contact? He looked down at his hands. Because you were the one person I trusted to care. I didn't want to burden anyone else, and I just wanted to know that if something happened, you'd know. Her chest tightened painfully. Daniel, he looked up, his eyes filled with quiet warmth. You've always had a way of making people feel seen, Emma. Even me. I guess I just wanted to feel that one more time. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. You shouldn't talk like that. You're going to be fine. He smiled faintly. I know, but when you get that close to not being fine, it makes you think about what really matters. She reached out and took his hand, gently, carefully. His fingers were warm against hers. I'm here, she whispered. You're not alone. He closed his eyes briefly, his expression softening. That means more than you know. For the next few days, she stayed in Seattle, helping him recover, bringing him meals, sitting quietly by his side. They talked, not about the past, not about love, but about life, about choices, about how time has a way of teaching people what truly lasts. When it was finally time for her to leave, Daniel walked her to the hospital entrance, still a little unsteady but smiling. Thank you, he said, for everything. You didn't have to come, but you did. She looked up at him, her heart heavy but calm. You've always been someone worth showing up for. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her face. You know, I used to think love was about wanting someone to stay. But now I think real love is being grateful that they exist, even if you have to let them go. Emma felt tears fill her eyes again. Goodbye, Daniel, he smiled gently. Goodbye, Emma. Take care of him. And take care of yourself. As she drove home, she felt both lighter and heavier at once. The pain was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't longing anymore. It was peace. That night, when Mark asked how Daniel was doing, she said simply, He's healing. He's going to be okay, Mark smiled. Good, I'm glad. Emma smiled back, but her mind lingered on Daniel's last words, because somewhere deep inside, she knew this was truly the last goodbye, or at least, that's what she thought, until something unexpected arrived in the mail a few weeks later, a letter with Daniel's handwriting on the envelope, and inside it, something that would change everything once again. A few weeks after returning home from Seattle, life began to feel normal again, or at least as normal as it could after everything that had happened. Mark was busy with work as always, and Emma tried her best to keep her mind occupied with house projects and volunteering. But some nights, when she sat by the fireplace with a book she wasn't really reading, her thoughts drifted back to Daniel, to the way he smiled at the hospital door, to the calm acceptance in his eyes. She hadn't heard from him since. She told herself that was a good thing. He was healing. He was moving on. And maybe now, finally, she could too. Then one quiet afternoon, as she was sorting through the mail, she froze. A cream-colored envelope sat among the bills and flyers. Her name was written in Daniel's familiar handwriting. The sight of it made her heart stop. She turned it over. No return address. Just her name. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small, folded photograph. The letter began simply, "Emma, if you're reading this, it means I've left Seattle for good. Not in the way I once thought I would, but in a better one. Please don't worry. I'm okay, truly okay this time." She felt her throat tighten as she kept reading. "I wanted to thank you. Not for coming to the hospital, but for something much bigger. For being the person who reminded me what kindness really is. You gave me something I never thought I'd find. Peace with my own heart." Tears blurred her vision. "I know we were never meant to be more than friends. And I've accepted that. But you should know, the love I had for you made me a better man. It taught me patience, selflessness, and faith in goodness. That kind of love doesn't end when two people part ways. It just changes shape." Her hands shook as she unfolded the small photograph. It was a picture of the three of them, her, Mark, and Daniel, standing together at a summer barbecue years ago. Mark's arm was around her, Daniel beside them, smiling wide. They all looked so happy, so young. She turned the photo over. On the back, Daniel had written a few words. "Some people are chapters. You were the whole book." By the time she reached the end of the letter, her tears had soaked the page. "I'm moving somewhere new, a small town by the ocean. I'm starting over and I'm happy. Please don't write back. Just remember me with kindness, the way I'll always remember you." Emma sat there for a long time, holding the letter close to her chest. When Mark came home that evening, she greeted him with a soft smile. He kissed her forehead, asked about her day, and told her about a meeting he had scheduled for the morning. Everything felt simple, ordinary, yet she knew something deep inside her had shifted. After dinner, she stepped outside onto the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. The world felt quiet, peaceful in a way she hadn't felt in months. She took a deep breath and whispered into the cool air. "Goodbye, Daniel." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying her words away, as if delivering them where they belonged. When she went back inside, she placed the letter and photograph in a small wooden box, locking it gently. She didn't hide it. She simply tucked it away, next to old family albums and postcards. A piece of her past, tender and true, but no longer a wound. In the days that followed, Emma began to notice something different within herself. The ache that had once felt so heavy was now light, almost comforting, like a quiet reminder that some people come into your life not to stay, but to teach you how to feel deeply and let go gracefully. And in some way, Daniel had done just that. Years later, Emma would still think of him sometimes, when she smelled lilies in the spring, or when she watched the ocean waves during her anniversary trips with Mark. But those thoughts no longer carried sadness. They carried warmth, because even though Daniel's love had begun in silence and ended with distance, it had left behind something beautiful, a deeper understanding of love itself, the kind that doesn't demand or destroy, but simply exists, grateful and kind, and that, she realized, was the truest love of all.